What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Image Clothing Company podcast. I don't currently have a guitar, and that's, what's common to have happen in the intros is me play a little guitar riff, but I have a metronome, so I don't know what we're gonna do, but something for the intro. It's cool, bro. I've been on this like I'm on a lawn, type of mowing it. I've been growing in this little hiatus I've been taking, doing the things I used to do. Now I'm doing them again, yeah. Anyway, I got this whole battle, dude. Music, brother. I need a guitar, though. Like I said, once I no longer had the last guitar that I did, there's no kind of thing about that. It's a good thing, but I need to get one again. I just need something different than that was. So, in the Image Clothing Company podcast is where you are. This is where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. There's three sides to us as a whole in the Image Clothing Company. There is what I call the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we have the anatomy of the human body be discussed by, well, up until now, it's just been me, right? And we address the human body's natural function, coming at it through the skeletal system. The key word is always allowing the body to work. We'll never get it to do anything other than what it's designed to do. And the body is designed to work. There was an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled that. You can go find if you'd like. But we talk about the things physically the body does, because clothing is the only thing placed onto us at all times. And so it really alters the body. If clothing is imbalanced in any way, even if it's sizing wise, it's just too large for you, and it's not having the seams sit at the locations where your body hinges and rotates and pivots, then your body's going to be altered. The body has a center line. There's no say or opinion to have, because Earth is where we are, all of us, every one of the human beings that is here, and it pulls us straight down from the center of us with gravity. The spine is there. There's a nervous system that goes from the brain down through what we call the brain stem at the top of the spine and the base of the skull, and then through the spine, it stems out. Well, it stems at this, so it does those things, goes out through the entire body, feeding the body like an electrical system, giving little nerve endings. Wow. Hold on for just a second. I'm not upset about nothing, but I just want to make sure I approach this correct, because this is actually episode 79 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled The Physicality of Emotion. And so I think the reason why that didn't feel so right to me is because I was kind of flying through that a little bit. We'll talk about that right now before we get into what else we discuss after the whole intro thing we do, because I mention often how the nervous system stems from the brain. The brain's just a computer, basically. It's the most complex thing that we know as human beings, and we didn't design it. We can't decide how it works. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled We Didn't Design It, We Can't Decide It. I went into not really the human brain, but just all the things that I did within there about what our God created for us, that we can't decide how they work, like the human body. So the brain feeds the spinal cord, which is where the nervous system gets traveled through, right? From the very base of the rear of your skull, where those upper trapezius muscles come and connect into, right there is the base of our brain. That's what we call the brain stem. It stems or feeds into the spine. From there, it goes down from the very base of the rear of your skull, all the way down to what you may know as your tailbone, the very lowest vertebrae of your spine, the very bottom part of your back, right? That meets into your pelvis. That whole thing's your spine. And within there, there's a lot of vertebrae. There's what we call the spinal cord, right? And within that, it is like a pathway for this electrical system of basically like wires, like in the house, right? How it's wired through the walls and it goes and feeds into where the light is that comes out, or it feeds into where the outlet is where you can plug something in. That's what the nervous system of our body is like. And it comes to our skin. And on the skin, well, underneath it, right, there's little nerve endings, as we call it. So all those little wires come and they end. And at the tips of those endings, I don't know all this and the exact way to describe it as far as if you're looking at it under a microscope, how is it going to look and what are the scientific terms for all these things. as of right now, I'm not even interested in knowing that because we don't need to unless, very, very specific cases. If you're like a neurosurgeon, then sure, but otherwise you don't need to know these things because you're not going to do anything about something that microscopic that you can't even see anyway, personally. So they end though at this, like where the skin can then feel, right? Those nerve endings have sensory abilities, right? The sense of touch. I use the term sensory activation a lot when I talk about tags within clothing or anything slippery, synthetic type of stuff that just didn't exist even decades back and never before then. Today's the 14th of March, 2025. But stretchy clothing, I talk about how damaging that is, and all these little endings of nerves that have come clear from our brain and are on like our fingertips and our feet and our kneecaps and every part of the body that has skin that can feel something with a sense of touch. That comes from the center of the body. So the body can tell if it's imbalanced just sensory-wise, not only weight-wise, not only because things bind, not only because muscles either get chronically shortened or chronically pulled on and elongated. All those reasons, and all the reasons that we talk about, muscles adhering to bones and building up scar tissue to try to hold on to things that are not tracking in line because of imbalances. But the sensory system of the body really, really tells the body that all that's happening, even if it doesn't really seem like it's being manifested, or in other words, like shown in other ways to the body. So the big thing with talking about that so much, even just within the intro before we're into the actual discussion, is because emotion, the word is just energy and motion, and then they just like shove those two words together, right? Emotion. It's just energy that moves right through the body. Emotions are physical, and so we'll get into that in the discussion. But the big thing is keeping the body centered. Allowing, keyword, the human body to work is what we always say under In The Image Clothing Company. And in order to do that, the body has to be centered. Like I say, when In The Image Clothing Company clothing is available, it will stay centered, fit correct, and allow the body to work, right? So being centered is something that we don't have a say over, making our highest importance over what we do with our physical bodies. Now, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Staying Centered, and I went over quite a bit within that and physically staying centered. So, yes, now let's further the intro. We talk about all things, though, on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, right? Meaning, yes, anything the human body does, really. Eating naturally, hydration, how to really actually do that without just actually depleting your body's minerals that it uses, electrolytes, to stay hydrated. And we talk about standing naturally, sitting naturally, all the things, right? Just how to walk naturally, how to just let the body have all its neutral joints in every part of it, because there is only a neutral, otherwise it's chronically imbalanced in one or the other directions of the joint. In any part the body has any movement where two bones come together. So, but yes, we address it all through the skeletal system. The fat content changes at different times. The muscle mass does as well, but the skeletal system just has to be operating in its only working position. That's really what the body is about. So, another third of our company is In the Image Clothing Company music. When it comes to singing, when it comes to what I do, instrument-wise, guitar, and really anything musically, we have to allow our bodies to approach that thing the only way they're going to work. And we discuss how to do that and all the ways that we discuss how to do that over there. So there we are as a company, the three sides. Now, we'll talk about clothing real quick as we do within the intro, because for everybody, no opinion, no care that you have to have, but the only way the human body's skeletal system connects and keeping it that way, these are the ways that that's going to have to be for that to be what it is, because you can't work out and try to get your body to operate well and then be within clothing that's altering your body. So clothing is a must. It's a first before you approach anything. Exercise as far as cardio, exercise as far as weight building, okay, weight training, strength building, muscle mass type of enlargement, right? Hypertrophy training, strongman competitions. I could list off all the whatever you do. But yes, whatever you're doing with your body, you have to address your clothing first because you're doing those things within clothing. There's a video that I made last fall in 2024 under the main site of In the Image Clothing Company titled "People Don't Move Through Life, They Move Through Clothing." It was worded very similar to that, if that wasn't how it was, because that's really the case. So there's a little context for being able to see that if you're kind of new to what we do here. That's really how it is. So pants that we wear, man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the globe, any time period, it will always be the same. Human beings are just what they are. The waistline of our pants has to be entirely above our hips, our pelvis as a whole, so it doesn't restrict it in any way. The waistband angle needs to be slightly higher in the front than it does in the rear. Anytime anybody is ever trying to train what we call our core, the abdominal muscles, or just the central part of the human being to stabilize from there up and from there down, they're wasting their time, myself included, if I were to try to decide that's what I wanted to do. It will only ever work, or it's just not working. It has to always stay activated. So that angle higher in the front, just slightly, is how those muscles are just going to be able to stay unaltered. Otherwise, they're being altered. I'm not going to even talk about how or why because I don't want to give ideas of anything. Just that's the case. That's how the muscles work. They have to get shorter and contract to work. The top seams of our shoulders, for the tops that we wear, need to be evenly behind the shoulders. Now, this is another thing that's really huge with the physicality of emotion is breathing patterns. And shoulder seams are breathing patterns. The hand is the shoulder. The feet are the hips. Like when I talk about how things are other things, one can't exist without the other, without compensation and altering happening. So the shoulders, oh my gosh. Your shoulders, people, 2025 human beings and past decades, your shoulders, they only work behind your body. There's a video under the main site of In the Image Clothing Company titled, "The Shoulders Sit Behind the Body." I went into the anatomy in depth, starting at the feet, coming up to the tops of the shoulders, and, well, really the top of the head, the tips of the fingers. The whole body only works as a whole. And the shoulders have to be behind the body. They will never work anywhere else. I'll talk about it a little bit because we need some context for this if you haven't heard other things from In the Image Clothing Company talking about this. As far as emotions go, muscles just have two insertions. They just take an endpoint and another endpoint on the opposite end of them, and they pull those things together. Muscles only pull, and they only can pull in line. So you take a bone over here, attach a muscle, you've got the whole span of that muscle, and there's a bone over on the other end where that muscle's attached as well. They're very, very rear of the base of the skull and along the spine on our neck, called the cervical spine, which just means the spine that's the part of the neck, is where those upper trapezius muscles connect, just meaning the muscles that shrug your shoulders, and then they come down and they connect to your shoulders. But the top end of the insertion of those muscles, where they're going to be pulling from to get your shoulders to raise and get out of the way for your breathing to happen, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Oxygen. I went into a lot of that. But the only way that's going to even happen, the only way the body will ever work when we're talking about this part of it, these things have to only ever be behind your head. These things are the shoulders. So because of that, like I said, people don't move through life, they move through their clothing. And most people are so restricted by their clothing, they're not really even doing the things that they're doing in their life. They're like doing them in a way with such compensation because they're trying to reach their arm, but their sleeves are in the way, or the edge seams of their shoulders are falling over where their shoulders are hinging. You know, people are trying to lift their feet and the pant cuff is sitting on top of their feet. People are trying to just move their upper leg and their waistband of their pants is squeezing their hips. And angles of things and stretch within things, unnatural materials, all the things we talk about. And we get into depth, like such depth. But anyway, this is a big one, dude. People deal with emotions because we're human beings and you're never going to transcend emotions. You're a human being. You're here to do and be. And emotions are part of that. You're never going to not have emotions. I think it's a common thing in modern day for people to think you can sit in like a yoga class, or you can do all these mantras, meditations, breath work and stuff to where you will be transcended. And you won't. You don't have to believe me. I always say that when I do, under In The Image Clothing Company. Just don't believe me. I'm just talking about things as they are. So truth manifests itself to you. Truth never changes. Truth is our God himself. Jesus the Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So you will never not experience emotion as a human being. And breathing is huge when it comes to emotion. Breath is the thing we have to have as human beings. There's nothing else we can go less time without before we die. And people die. But ideally, not for reasons that, we can do something about in the ways that we're supposed to be doing something about if we can, right? Now, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind the little bones that are on the peak of our shoulders, at the very top of them, at the near the edges. Those are the other end of the collarbones that come down to the middle of the front of our chest, called the sternum, that bone that is in the center, opposing the spine on the rear of the body. Now, the dreaded collar seam. I talk about it, I quote-unquote coined the term, up here within t-shirts, on usually almost always, not always, but just about the top left of the collar of t-shirts, sweaters, things with just a solid collar like that. We have a modification for it you can find under In The Image Clothing Company. And it's a must because that seam is just changing the height of the shoulders, changing the rotations of the whole body, internal rotation within the body, just coming toward itself, closer to the center, like how I'm sitting now. If you're an audio only, then okay. But if you're watching visual plus audio of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, it's available in both video plus audio and just audio only. You can see I sit with I don't know if you can see my knees very much. You can tell. My knees are so close together. My hands are close together. I'm sitting on the ground because to be a human being, you need to be closest to your spine, where everything's stemming from, your brain, where everything's stemming from. You need to be closest to where your body's going to have its most strength, which is its center. There's no belief to have. That's just the only way that a mechanical machine works the best, which is the human body. Leverage, right? It's just we're coming closest to where everything's central, okay? The shoulders only will ever work behind the body. So the seams determine where the shoulders sit. Because like I was saying, people are going through clothing. They're not going through life. And so that's where the top seams have to be, okay? And with that collar seam, the dreaded collar seam, if we don't modify it, it not only elevates the shoulder with the side the collar seam is placed, but it also just changes rotations of the whole body. And external rotation is farther away from your own self. Internal rotation is closer to yourself. Under In The Image Clothing Company, we never do anything to address getting external rotation. It's something you will have if your body is not functioning correct, because it's just a limper state, a farther away from your own strength of center state. Again, just a mechanical machine. That's what the human body really is physically. That's it. That's it. And I say it like that when I say it. I just make it so clear. That's all it is. That's all it is. We're not our bodies. It's not a belief. The body's a machine we've been given to operate through this life with. There's an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast titled As a Vessel. Our bodies are our vessels, like a boat that we can sit within on a watery place, a lake, a river, the ocean, right? So, a pond. All right. The edge seams of our shoulders need to be evenly right at the very edges. I don't normally say evenly up until now when I talk about the edge seams, but that's a big thing. The collar seam, the dreaded collar seam, under In The Image Clothing Company, that's what we call it, it will cause the shoulder seams at the edges of the shoulders to be imbalanced toward the opposite side of where the collar seam is placed. So it's almost always on the left side of the collar, which will place the shirt farther off the right shoulder for the edge seams. So they need to be right where the shoulders are going to move, though. There's just a joint at the shoulders. That's where the seams have to sit. Otherwise, compensation. And really, it's those upper traps just being elongated. These upper trapezius muscles I talked about earlier, connecting the shoulder to the base of the rear of the skull and the spine in the very rear of the body, okay? Those are the biggest things being affected, is those upper trapezius muscles. People talk about people having overactive upper traps. They talk about tension headaches. They talk about neck tension. They talk about eye strain in ways that's coming from upper trapezius imbalance. There's nothing wrong with your muscles, but you're just placing something onto your shoulders that's pulling on your muscles. It's an external thing. It's not your body. And most all problems that the human being faces physically are not the body's fault. It's things that it's being forced to hold up, work around, and interact with in life in modern 2025 and going forth, right? It's just only going to get progressively worse. Buckle up. So, yes, it will. Don't take my words and think that because Evan Strong said something, it's going to be the case. But read the Book of Mormon, read the Holy Bible, pray to our living God, Jesus Christ. It's the truth of all things. We live in what's called the last days, getting closer to the second coming of our living God, Jesus Christ himself. You don't have to believe me. It's the truth. So, it's hard for people to breathe directly because of seams on tops, because of all the reasons it is, and we get into it, but I'm going to further this real quick, and then we'll get into the actual discussion of the physicality of emotion. In the Image Clothing Company has what we call prerequisites, 2 of them. Firstly, just to allow the feet to be unaltered, we have what we call our shoelacing technique under In the Image Clothing Company. It's not ours, but just the only way you're going to weave a rope, which is all that a shoelace is, across the top of the feet that's shaped the way the top of the feet is shaped. With that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside of the human being where the center line is. Otherwise, you're rotating your whole body to the tip of your finger, to the tip of your head from a knot around your ankle, okay? Secondly, we remove all tags from clothing, even within shoes. Anywhere a tag is placed, it's either causing a physical gap, altering the body's only working position, and or not allowing, as I was talking about, which we'll talk more about within this, the sensory system of the body. It's not allowing that to safely activate against it. So the musculature that's placed next to where the tag is, vice versa. The tag's placed next to where the body just has its musculature. It's not going to be able to activate safely because it's slippery and it's not something that the body feels like it can predict or work against at all. And that's crazy. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. That also plays into rotations. Tags on the sides of clothing rotate the whole body. Tags in the rear of clothing just put the body out of its only neutral position. So my jaw hurts. Speaking of being out of your only neutral position, I've had a lot of pain in my jaw recently. A lot. So anyway, let's get into this. The physicality of emotion. I got a lot of pain in my jaw. A lot. The jaw is huge. This is episode 79. In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The physicality of emotions. Emotions aren't something that a medication is going to fix. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I tried for 6 years. I was on what they call mental health medication. Whatever you want to think that's going to do to you. Emotions are a physical thing, and the body's designed to work. And within that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Designed to Work, I talked about how not only is it designed to work only in a specific way, but it's designed to always be working well and activated as a whole. Now, doing anything to alter the body from the only way it was designed to work is going to alter it. So these altering medications aren't going to help you, and I'm sorry if you have hope that they will. They won't. Hope is not something we need to have. They might lessen some symptoms, but the symptom isn't the problem. It's like how within the human body, I talk about the pain site is almost never the actual cause. If you're having pain in your knees or your hips or your back or your shoulders, it's almost always your feet. It can be other things as well. You know, like I say, how the hand is essentially the shoulder, the feet are essentially the hips. Pain in your shoulders, pain in your jaw, pain in your neck can be coming from your hand being altered. Now, if you alter your brain chemistry with medication, your whole body is going to be out of whack, okay? And in some ways, your symptoms may have lessened, but your symptoms aren't the problem, right? You can adjust and address your shoulders and your hips all you want, but if your feet are being altered, they're the problem in that case. They're the cause of the hip or shoulder pain. Addressing symptoms doesn't fix anything at all, nor will it ever. There's a cause to things. There's a reason for everything. Everything happens for a reason. No belief. It just does. Otherwise, how could it? Okay? There's a cause and effect, right? These are like physics terms. It's not no kind of thing you can have any opinion against. It's not an opinion. Everything happens for a reason. Now, the physicality of emotions needs to be seen as it is. The body only works one way. It only will ever work one way. Evan Strong, me, the human being speaking, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, is one of the most bold people that I've heard, and it doesn't matter who I have or haven't heard, meaning I speak boldly on how the body only works one way. And I say it so strongly and like I'm trying to pierce through a bulletproof, soundproof piece of glass when I say it sometimes, because it's not my opinion. And people hear a lot of opinions, people push a lot of opinions, and that's so unfortunate. Therapies, medications, therapists, right? All the things you want to try to do, breath work, mantras, meditations. I think I might have said that already, but the body only works one way. If it's not, and there's anything you can do about it to get it to, you have to. Otherwise, you're suffering what we could call is the consequences, but really what you're also doing is just feeling the symptoms of a cause, which was altering the body's only workings, okay? This is the part where I say speaking like I'm yelling and shattering a bulletproof glass with my voice, right? It's soundproof, but you're still hearing it through 8 layers of it. The body will only ever, for everyone, work the way that it does. Never will it do anything that our God did not design it to do. There's no limitations to that. But it will never do anything that it doesn't just do. Okay? And when we place things onto it being clothing, we're altering it if we're not extremely intentional. Okay? So that nervous system that I was talking about, when we think about the word nervous, sometimes we think about picking our nails and biting them and, fidgeting with things, and you're nervous emotionally. Energy in motion. That's literally all those 2 words did, was come together and have a crash course and became one, right? Fused the metal, they hit so hard. Built a good car, but not so much crumple zone. The heat got so hot, it just fused the metal together. All right, now you got 1 word out of 2. In all seriousness, emotions are physical because we have a nervous system within the body. Sensory activation. Sensory system, right? The body just has systems. The body's just a machine. It's just a physical machine. You die and it just stops working and you go on. You're not your body. Don't believe me. It's not an opinion. Some people don't know that, though. It's the truth. Now, when we have our body's nervous system feeling things it never was designed to, we have modern materials that didn't exist even a few decades back from today's date. I told you what today's date is. Polyester is oil that they turn into plastic. It's slippery, seeps into the body's pores. It doesn't allow the musculature to work. Tags within shoes don't allow our ankles to even work, so now our hamstrings are getting tied. and you're stretching them and it's pointless. Your pelvis has now gone anterior, which means like tipping forward. And if your pelvis changes, your whole body compensates because your pelvis is the center vertically. So now you have back pain, shoulder pain, neck tension, your jaw changes, your feet arches collapse, your open palms and your hands aren't there anymore. Your hands are now trying to work in a position they never will, which is more flat. You have knee pain, hip pain, all the things, whatever, your body's popping and clicking, and you're trying to stretch your body to get to its only given ranges of motion that it just should have. So tags, stretch of any kind, stretch within materials of clothing, stretch within laces of shoes, stretch within drawstrings of pants, drawstrings tied unevenly, right? Twisting the entire pelvis rather than using what I use and what I share within In the Image Clothing Company, a slipped lap knot, LAPP. And when you tie the side that's just a single loop, loop it toward the center of yourself. Go look that up. Now, any of that and all of that is just altering the body's physical workings. But the body experiences emotions physically. And right when you sweat, you start to sweat. Meaning when you're nervous, sometimes you start sweating. The body is perspirating because it's physically feeling the emotion of being anxious, startled, uneasy, nervous, right? It's a physical thing. When you hear about like fight or flight, you start to get a little anxious and your body tenses up, your shoulders start to raise. Well, if your shoulders are raising and you've got a dreaded collar seam, your shoulders are in balance, now your whole spine's twisted, the rotations of your shoulders and your hips traveling to your hands and your feet are twisting, and your body is suffering. Because you got a little bit startled, which is fine because you're a human being and you feel emotions. But it gets stuck into you with these chronic patternings because of the thing placed onto us that's man-made, being clothing, okay? So this is why I'm so intentional. This is why I speak so bold. This is why sometimes we're trying to put Boo's door back together. You know, shout out to Monsters, Inc. I just envisioned like this sheet of 8 pieces of those. Bulletproof, soundproof glass shattering. I pictured Boo's door breaking and it being put back together. Well, they actually put it through a shredder. Monsters Incorporated by whoever it is, Disney, Pixar or something, right? That just came to me because that's cool. All right, man, just a little break, I guess, a little joke in the midst of, this is a pretty serious topic. So many people are feeling so many things. What we label as depression, what we label as anxiety, what we label as any kind of thing that they want to call a disorder, it's a patterning. It's a chronically stuck in a physical position, human flesh, that isn't allowed to work in the only way that it ever will. So the physicality of emotions. When you get this fight or flight experience, you start sweating, your shoulders have raised, your hands maybe clench a little bit, the feet are trying to activate as much as they can within maybe incorrect shoelaces, pressing your arches down when they're trying to get ready to activate and run and jump or fight or kick or move, right? The twist that's happening within either a drawstring, even just pants, because the rear stitch twists the glutes and doesn't allow one side, almost always the right, to even fully activate and like come back into a position where the leg can fully extend. I am going to just be a little bit intentional about how deeply I talk about the anatomy versus just getting the point across, and then you can go see the anatomy of all this. I could deeply talk about within the main side of In the Image Clothing Company and wherever else I do it under the company as a whole. Because under In the Image, yeah, anyway, yeah, yes, that's where it is. I was going to talk about more things, and no, the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. Go there for the anatomy. But all the things that your body's going to do to try to get out of a sticky situation, right? You get a little bit nervous, a little bit startled, a little bit feeling like you might have to take care of something. You got to either fight off an animal that just came up to you, or you have to run away from something. Your body needs to start getting ready to do that. And when it does, things start to move a little bit, especially if your body's already not quite working correct. Because the body should always be activated as a whole. That's the only way it ever will work. That's why I talk about the things that I do as far as positions that the body doesn't do, but we're doing so commonly in modern day. But when the feet try to activate and you've got twisting happening when your core tries to activate, which is nuts because it should always be activated, but, or just when you're, right? That's the big thing though, is so many people are in a state of just already deactivation, which should never happen to any part of the human being. It only will ever work as a whole, as an animal would. Imagine your dog having one of its legs deactivated, or what you could think of as the dog's core deactivated because it was wearing some jeans, right? The whole dog wouldn't work. And there'd be many parts of it compensating. It'd be overeating to try to keep up with how much overwork its body's doing. It'd be over drinking fluid to try to stay hydrated because the body's just excessively sweating, right? These are the reasons human beings do these things. And we talk about this because that's how it is. That's why it is. That's why people are so dehydrated. One of the main reasons. Yeah, so it's nuts, dude. It's the truth. It's no opinion. It's every human to ever live. It's across the entirety of our earth. It's black, white, brown, and Asian. Any other race or ethnicity or color you could be as a human being. It's a mechanical machine. It's only going to ever do what it is designed to do by our God before we even were born. Now, the physicality of emotions, dude. People live life in a twist. I think I've been envisioning, okay, I'm not going to say I think we're going to do this, but I will say that I've been envisioning, because it has been the case since the founding of the Image Clothing Company, like a documentary, like a movie, titled something like Life in One Direction, because almost everybody's going through their entire life looking right. If you tie your shoes in what would be a right-handed knot, I'm not going to give an idea of what that is, over toward the inside on both feet has to be done. There's a center line to the human being. But otherwise, because 85% of the population, give or take, of the entire earth are right-hand dominant, what a right-handed knot is, if you're tying that any part of anything within the body and everywhere, when there's two sides, so you're doing a right-handed knot on both sides, don't, please. Just don't. There's a center line that has to be. There is. I have no say. You have no say. There just is. But if you're twisting your whole body, then you're going through life looking toward one side, always. This twist doesn't stop once it gets to the tip of your head. It doesn't stop once it gets to the tip of your feet, stemming from, well, I meant to say the tips of your hands, but stemming from your feet. Stemming from your hands, it goes down to your feet. Stemming from your feet, it comes out to your hands, okay? The body only works as a whole. Ever. There's no say anyone could have on how their body works. It only does what it will ever do. And it was going to do that before you even were born. This will never change. So, people are in this chronic, deeply, deeply, deeply ingrained twist within their body. The pelvis, in a right-handed case, of what it generally means for right-handed patterning to be because of the things that are placed onto us, okay, clothing. The pelvis will be forward, which is known as anterior, and to the left, okay? The lower leg will be sticking out, as far as like the toes will be pointing away from the center line, external rotation from the hip down to the foot. The right arm will be an external rotation from the shoulder capsule because the body's connected, so through the spine, all the way out to the tips of the fingers from the hips, right? It's twisted. Okay, so anyway, if you're living life within a twist, just check out In The Image Clothing Company. We just discussed it so deeply, but that's not what we're doing right here in this episode. But we discuss the truth of all this, not an opinion on how you could maybe fix something and it might work for about a month or two as long as you keep up a routine. We discuss the actual true cause and root, not the symptoms, but the problems and how to just stop them. Allow the body to work. Truth. Undisputed. Applies to every human to ever live. In The Image Clothing Company. Really. Don't believe me. It just is the truth. So, if you're going through life within a twist, everything you ever do, if you experience something that's slightly startling, your body tenses. It's natural. If you're in nature and you see two animals and they like come up on each other, one rounds a bush and the other one was just sitting there and they didn't know they were there, even two house cats, you don't have to be out somewhere that's away from where maybe you normally are, or two dogs, if they come around the corner of a sofa and one didn't see the other, sometimes they just kind of jump a little bit. That's their body activating, getting ready to just move, either defend themselves from the other animal or run away from it or just whatever has to happen. The human being does that. There's no, again, you're not going to transcend emotions and just like not have that happen to you. You're a human being. Always in this life. That's all you are. That's all you will ever be in this life. Myself as well. Don't get the wrong idea because people are trying to give it, and you will never be anything else. You're sent here to be what you are, as you are. Your God, who loves you perfectly, created you as that. That's all you will ever be in this life. You're never going to stop feeling emotions. But if you tense your whole body up, just ready to move it, and it's encapsulated within something that's going to twist it, now you're having scar tissue build up within this imbalance, because as muscles pull, they want to pull, like I was discussing at the beginning, just directly straight in line from the endpoints to like the center of that muscle mass as a whole, just what the muscle is meaning, right? And if the body's twisted and that muscle's trying to pull straight, now like somewhere from your wrist to your elbow, I'm showing this in visual, but if you're an audio only, I'll explain it as well so you can understand. From your elbow to your wrist, like down to your hand, there's muscles within there that just want to pull straight. And if you're standing or sitting or sleeping, even unconscious, right? Your body's still alive. It's still working. If that's not in line and it's only neutral working position, then if there's a twist within it, because the body has rotations, and that's natural, but if they're not naturally within their neutral, so they can either go like left or right, either go internal or external from their neutral, then if there is any twist, now that muscle's pulling and the muscle's pulling in line, but the endpoints are in a position that's not in line. So now in the meat or like the mass, the center, the main part of the muscle between the endpoints, that will adhere to the bone that it's next to try to really hold on because it's not being allowed to work in its only inline position, being the neutral for whatever joint we're talking about within the entire body. Every joint has a neutral, and it has to. Now, that's happening so common, just always. More so in modern day and going forth, like I said, because things are more unnatural. Things are unnaturally flat. There was never stuff as flat as it is now in the past. They didn't have technology to be able to smooth things down as flat as it is nowadays, as they did in the past. Like before, if we think about quite a while back when they invented like glass windows, there was no such thing as something like smooth, right? You've got wood, and sure, you can sand it down and make it really smooth, but there's still some texture, right? We have stuff that's so slippery. A lot of the things that we have nowadays, not just one material, not just one type of thing, but go take a walk outside and look at a tree, look at dirt, look at things that are always there and always have been and always will be, rocks. There's texture to it all. And so using something that's just different than natural, the goal is natural under In the Image Clothing Company. As we say, the body is natural and always will be, but it's trying so hard to do all that it can to interact with unnatural materials, surfaces, and all the things that we have. I've been thinking about dogs a lot. I'm going to get a dog. Yeah. Even that in itself is humbling. Just some stuff that's just such certainty. It's not your decisions, like me playing guitar, like In the Image Clothing Company just being what it is. I didn't do this out of me thinking I was going to do something and call it this. It just kind of came to be, really. I'm the one that's like putting forth the effort to continue it, but out of promptings and out of praying through it. So I've been thinking about how dogs are walking on these hardwood floors, tile floors, and dogs probably live a lot longer and are probably a lot healthier within their joints and just have a lot easier natural mobility. when they're not within households on these slippery floors as often as some other dogs. And, well, things like collars. I think we'll talk about dogs quite often, especially once I get a dog, I'll have even more personal experience with it, and then maybe we'll show her on the camera as well, but, the body only works how it does. And so when your body's not working because something's altering it, emotionally, you're going to feel that. And the big thing with breath is stuff like the shoulders not just being able to track up and down, even in line, unevenness in whatever it is, stitching wise or weight wise or anything within a top that we wear. We use things nowadays in our hands that are just not anywhere near the workings of the hands. And so a lot of the forearms, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled it's titled Choose the Right. And I talked about how the right side of the body is almost the only side that even needs to be addressed when it comes to breaking up scar tissue and just getting the body back to its normal workings, because it's the side that's getting damaged. The left is pretty well unaltered. Yeah, it's the right side of the body. And clothing patterns alone are right-handed, quote unquote, as far as the designs. A zipper, you'll unzip it and it'll hang on the right side. Some zippers are on the left, and a lot of times women's are. Buttons, you'll unbutton them and they'll hang on the right, more weight. Again, women's sometimes are on the opposite side, but not always. There's a lot of things that are just about always on the right, though. Like I was discussing, the rear seam of pants that goes down the center of the glutes, it's almost always forward on the right, pushing that right glute forward, inhibiting the whole right side of the body just from that alone, right? All the things, again, I'm not going to talk so deeply on certain things within this because there's other places to see that under In the Image Clothing Company, the main side for these type of things. Yeah, the anatomy and clothing, that's where that is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. But all the things that you do as a human being, physically, which is what a human being is, something that is just doing and being a fleshly operable machine, it's going to alter your emotional state because the nervous system is what gives your body the ability to even feel emotions. And it's a physical system. I've talked about before how mental and emotional, as far as a lot of times it gets talked about with four things, like the human as we are, or just life as we know it, existence as it is, whatever, right? As broad as you want to get. We talk about spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. And I've talked in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast how, first and foremost, we're spirit children of our living God, Jesus the Christ. But before mental and emotional come at all, as even a thought to focus on, you have to address physical, right? Our brain is a physical electrical system. So physically, right, has to come before the brain, the intellect, the mind, whatever you want to call it, right? Thoughts. And then from there, we can have emotions, because again, the nervous system of the human being stems from our brain. It's an electrical system. So that's really the order it has to go in. I don't want to try to sound like I'm right about that or like it's cut and dry, but it really is the order it has to go in. That's just what it is if we're looking at it as it is. So, yeah. Yeah. Now, the big thing is, like I was saying, I've been having jaw pain a lot. When it comes to emotions, a lot of people associate nervousness to speak, not feeling so confident with speaking or smiling. They associate that with emotion, but it's a physical thing. When you speak, you're not going to speak if your jaw doesn't work. And your jaw naturally stabilizes your entire body. And so if any part of your body, as we talk about, isn't working correct, something else and many things within it have to compensate. It only works as a whole. It only works one way. Everything only has a neutral position. It's just a mechanical machine. Now, as I'm saying this, I have a lot of pain in my jaw. It's not fun. I have been experiencing this for months. Not fun, but my body is physically changing so much. You don't have to believe it. I've been documenting these, just this 1/3 of our company alone, the podcast episodes under In the Image Clothing Company podcasts in visual. Yeah, however that was worded, that's, yeah, right. You can see it. I can't try to make it something it isn't. And because of that, I've been going through a lot of pain. Years of chronic patterning being released back to its only workings within my own personal physical body as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, Evan Strong. Okay. Now, there's been a lot of emotional stuff that's come with that because when we're talking, our jaw is moving, our lungs are moving. The only way that you can audibly make noise with your vocal cords is by air going across them, and it vibrates them and it makes sound. And so for that to happen, our rib cage is expanding and contracting. The actual physical bones of our ribs encapsulating our lungs. And when we talk about breathing and how big that is when it comes to emotions, our voice doesn't work without breath. And so when you feel a little bit nervous to speak, when you're speaking, you're breathing. When you're speaking, your jaw is moving. Breath is the first thing that human beings need. The utmost physical thing that we can't live without, first and foremost, before anything else could come. And the jaw stabilizes the entire body. So those are two very huge things happening when we're talking. And so a lot of times we associate nervousness and anxiety with speaking, especially, talked about as like a term, public speaking. That's when it gets really more noticeable. But even just talking to a single person, talking within a group of a few people, talking even on a phone or whatever it is, verbally speaking, right? Vocalizing words. A lot of people talk about how much emotion comes behind that because it's a physical function. This is just how it is. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, speaking on things as they are. This is, please don't go taking medications to alter your body. Please don't go try to have this and that and those things happen to try to get something to be something. In the Image Clothing Company allows, keyword, the body to work. Otherwise it won't. Period. No say that any human being could ever have, because none of us designed it, so we can't decide it. Now, that's a lot of what's going on with speaking and the jaw, breathing, and vocalization. Okay, so that's huge. The body's just huge. If you can't have full extension within your joints, you're never going to be able to fully elevate your shoulders if your elbows can't fully extend. To have a neutral wrist, both of those things have to happen as well, right? The hand stems from the shoulder. So if your shoulder can be in a good position, that's great. Now your elbow needs to be able to fully extend for your wrist to be in its neutral position, for your hand as far as the open palm, and then your fingers to be in their neutral, fully extended position, okay? It all has to work as a whole. Otherwise, it just won't work. Most everybody is in a state of their bodies just not working in modern 2025. And going forth, again, going forth, will only have to be more intentional, but going forth, I can't, guarantee, and I'm not guaranteeing any of this. I'm just, talking about it as it is. We're leading up to something I didn't decide, the second coming, truly. People might, in some ways, start to have their bodies work quite a bit better because a lot of people actually are now. A lot of people are wearing flat shoes instead of heels on the shoes and these open-toed shoes. A lot of people are wearing pants above their hips again. It's something that has been labeled as a fashion thing, but it's just the only way the body's going to work. And people are starting to do that again out of fashion reasons, actually, is a big part of why in this time period. But people's bodies aren't working, and we've never had such a high demand for therapists. We've never had such a boom in mental health focus, right? And it's because people's physical bodies, there's other reasons to it. The internet, huge, right? We live in a comparison society. There's so many things with just the abundance of stuff and so much consuming going on, so much antisocial stuff because we live in such a self-centered society, even though we have things that we call socials in the ways that we do. It's very not the case, what you're hearing versus what it is. But physically, also the things that we have technology-wise that we're using with our hands, they're not working for the hands. There's no texture just about to things like glass and smooth plastic, polys, right? Polyurethane, which is, plastic, but also a lot of clothing is actually made out of similar stuff. So people's physical bodies is why they're having emotion that they don't know how to navigate. They don't know how to like escape in a sense. And that's why people want to just not feel emotion. Just be totally blissed out all the time and transcend the human existence when you're a human being. It's never going to happen in this life. I've jokingly said it before because it's a joke and so many people buy into it. And guess who is one of those people at a time in dates prior to now? Evan Strong, the human being currently speaking, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Yeah, I was doing meditations and going to therapy, and I mentioned medication. Yeah, oh yeah. But I was misled. I also wasn't leaning on faith in our living God, Jesus Christ, in times as much as I could have been. And that's on me. And that's on you if you're not doing that, if you know that he is who he says he is. If you don't know, welcome to In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. Truly. Don't believe me. It just is. Now, and it just was before I was even born to say that it was or not. And it still will be after I die. Yeah, okay. It's just the case. It's not about me saying anything. I'm just relaying something that is what it is, regardless of if I even existed or not. So being able to fully extend your joints, though, is huge, because if you can't fully extend your elbow, you can't fully expand your rib cage. So if your right side, it's the side that's almost always inhibited more, and really almost the only side we need to even address within the body. If you can't fully extend your right elbow, but with your feet aligned, the only way they'll ever work, with your hips aligned, the only way they'll ever work, with your shoulders aligned, the only way they'll ever work, and with your jaw in a neutral position, with your core actually activated, just the body working as it would if it was never altered, the only way it ever will work. In the state like that, now try to fully extend your elbow. But again, right, shoulders have to be at the height they'd actually naturally be activated, just working normally. Normal. The actual normal that there is there. The only one there is. If you can't fully extend your elbow, your shoulder will then drop to compensate. Your wrist will be out of its neutral position and all the other things that happen. Again, compensation through the whole body. But the big thing with that right elbow and all that gristly stuff on the outside of that right forearm is now your right shoulder has dropped. A lot of reasons as to why. We mentioned a few, right? Dreaded color seam is just so huge. It's so damaging to the body. The whole right side of your rib cage, though, like underneath your right shoulder, probably isn't expanding. Meaning, in saying that, I'm just speaking for just about every human in 2025 and going forth. But, again, I can't really speak for the quote-unquote future, but, right, just as far as imbalances, if they're continuing, this is the case for right-handed people and all the reasons that clothing and the world is right-handed. This right side of your rib cage needs to be able to expand fully and evenly with the left. Otherwise, now when you're breathing, your jaw is compensating for your rib cage not expanding, but it's stemming from your elbow not being able to extend fully, right? And maybe that's stemming from your hand, but maybe it's stemming from something far away from your elbow, right? Just the hand's quite close, and so that's more understandable for people who don't know so much of this stuff. But right, your shoelace is going to not allow your right elbow to fully extend if it's not being tied evenly over toward the inside, laced with, not because it's some company's technique, but in the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique, just because it's the only way the human foot is shaped on the top. So, tags within, yeah, just everything, right? We can get into all of it, and we do, but the point is, everything you ever do in your life, your body is just being overworked if it's being altered. So emotionally, energy and motion, right? If you don't have fluid, just meaning unrestricted motion within your body, because your body's just designed to move, then you're going to have more energy being used to try to do the motion that's being restricted. And so you're going to have less energy because you're depleting it, right? The body sleeps at night to replenish itself, and it wakes up. We eat to get fueled. We stay regulated fluid-wise, what we call hydration, just so the body can be lubricated and have all its functions flow well. And if anything's being altered, then you're like feeling it emotionally through your whole body. And yeah, the physicality of emotion. I mean, even just smiling, because I talked about talking, speaking, using the vocal cords, using the jaw to move, and what comes from all the movement within the rib cage and the lungs when it, plays into speaking and making sound audibly. That's the only way it happens. Air blowing across little things that vibrate that we call vocal cords. But even smiling, lifting your face muscles, if you do that with your body in an imbalance, then I've talked in the past how, well, it was in the episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Vices. And I talked about how when you're walking down like a path or a road or a hallway and somebody's coming past you on your left side and you're on the right side of them, and you kind of look over to the left of them and you smile a little bit and then you stop smiling, and your body, you feel like something just happened to you, and you get a little bit emotional about it, worked up, and a lot of it is thoughts, right? About, did I smile in a weird way? Should I have smiled? Should I have said something? Did I wave too weirdly or not enough? Or, oh, I didn't wave at all and they did, or I said something back, right? Whatever. The point is, though, like I was talking about within that episode titled Vices of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, our body gets into these physical patternings, and if you're not able to raise the right side of your body, then when you're smiling, your head is imbalanced because compensation, just from a smile not working correct, right? You can't lift the right side of your face, and so your head will tilt to the right to kind of make it seem like those muscles are coming up, when really it's like the head's coming down to meet them. The muscles of the cheek and the around like the eye and into the nose on the side there, and all the muscles of the face. This is real. This is really real. This is how it is. This is just how it is. And so a lot of the emotion that comes behind that smile, or even, well, but just smiling straight even, right? The muscles on the right side of your body just aren't lifting if you're in external rotation on the right side. If your arm naturally just hangs a little bit farther away from the right side of your body, as far as the right arm goes, than your left arm and the left side of your body, right? If your right foot sticks out and your left foot's mostly straight, then you're just farther away from yourself over there because muscles just aren't working. So they're just limp and falling into external rotation, more of a dropped position than internal rotation. Just because of the muscles that do internal rotation, again, it's just coming closer to your center line, they elevate the body. So this is just what it is, dude. This is how it is. And so when you feel like you are a little bit self-conscious about your smile, that's something in 2025 as well. That is something, it's never been so, yeah. People have, yeah, gosh, yeah. People can't smile nowadays. A lot of people don't want to smile because they're so self-conscious about it. But if you smile and it twists your whole body, reinforces even more external rotation on your right side because the only side of your face that even worked in the smile was the left. And also we have technological devices that we're using with our dominant side being almost always the right of a human being in modern day. So we're looking down into the right. So the whole side's just drooped, okay, on the right side. It's like you had a stroke. Some people literally look like they are like stroke people. They had gone through a stroke experience. And it's common because of just the patternings that we're so chronically in modern day. It never was like this in the past to the degree that it is. And so the reason why so many people feel like they can't smile nowadays, physically, the physical reason as to why, is because it's an emotional thing, right? If you try to smile, smiling is associated with happiness. And it's associated with being lighthearted and inviting and approachable and reciprocative after somebody said something and you smile about it. But if you smile, and whether it was a genuine thing that happened because you felt an emotion that caused you to smile, or you're doing it out of some kind of social reason, right? We should never fake smile, but, right, times and places things happen for reasons, right? Everything does, as we addressed earlier within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 79, The Physicality of Emotion. Now, when you do smile, though, regardless of the reason, let's say it was an authentic, completely real smile, and it just happened. After you smile, and, well, immediately once you do, your body is twisted. Your head kind of falls to the right, and you feel it. Your jaw, like, it takes muscles that go into your jaw to smile, to raise your cheeks, right? And to move your mouth in that position. Your nose should be able to scrunch, and the right side of people's noses probably almost always can't even scrunch. Most of their noses nowadays can't even because there's so much built up scar tissue there because of breathing through it within imbalances from the rest of the body. We get into depth with this stuff. I talk about how posture is so much stuff like cartilage within the nose, right? Seriously, it's built up excessively. And so when you smile, even if it's entirely real, you feel the imbalance and the twist within your whole body coming from just your face muscles imbalanced when they activate. And so now it sends an imbalance through your whole body's nervous system. And even going into that smile entirely authentically, now you almost feel like wrong about doing it because once you smiled, it reinforced this realization to your nervous system that your body is imbalanced. And there was compensation physically that had to happen just to smile when it was just something you did authentically, right? And so then people try to, maybe not smile as often, or if they're trying to or not, feel like they're not comfortable smiling because it's a physical thing happening imbalance wise. I mean, you'll feel it in your back, you'll feel it in your upper pec, you'll feel it in your hips. Yeah, because of the compensation that's happening. Your neck, your jaw tension, right? And like I was talking about with all the jaw tension that I have, I mean, I'm understanding of why, because of where I currently am, and I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, keyword allowing the body to work. So I know a lot of what we talk about here. I mean, I'm the one that's talking about it up until today's date. So yeah. But a lot of stuff that we attribute to emotion and start to maybe try to go to our brains to address it, or maybe try to go to our childhood trauma, which, I mean, yeah, we react to things because of stuff that happened similarly as a child. But the thing is, it's like what we talk about within physical patternings within the body. A lot of what I've discussed within this is physical patternings. What we talk about with emotion and go to things like childhood trauma, it's It's a patterning. It's a patterning. Something that we did as a child or experienced as a child, and we reacted to it in a way that then created that patterning happening again and again throughout our lives, right? We go through patternings as human beings. The stuff that we react harshly to, it's not new, but it's because we've reacted to it in the past, and now the body's experiencing an emotion, meaning a physical motion because of energy happening that it experienced in the past, and there was a not so good experience to that at one point, and then maybe just compounding, right? Each time that it does happen, it's reinforcing how imbalanced physically you were when that did happen. Because a lot of childhood trauma, well, a lot of just trauma as far as blunt force trauma, a car wreck, somebody got hit by somebody else or got shot or something big like that physically. The reason why they call it post-traumatic stress disorder. The reason why that happens is because the body remembers the physical experience through the nervous system that happened in that big event that was a lot to take in for the senses of the human being to just like dissect. And then you go through something similar and the body has a similar reaction to the big main event that did happen, right? So the physicality of emotions, that's why I titled it this, and that's why it is what it is, and that's why it's emotion. The body's a mechanical machine. It has motions. We experience things that we may attribute to something that they're not when they're actually, in the cases that they are, physical, right? So, yeah, in the Image Clothing Company, and that's why I say we're so much bigger than a lot of people maybe even know as far as what we do here, because it's things like emotion, right? Your clothing is causing you to feel emotions that you don't have to. If your clothing's stretchy at all, if your clothing's unnatural at all, if your clothing doesn't fit you correct at all, it's imbalancing your physical being and your energy. No kind of belief about this. I know that this is like a term that gets used, but not using it in some term way, but using it as it is. The energy of the human being is being disrupted. You go to reach your arm forward and you're using kinetic energy, just meaning energy that moves like a machine. You're just using energy to get your arm down from your side where it's hanging to lift it up in front of you to shake somebody's hand. And if you go to lift up your arm to shake somebody and it's hitting into seams and clothing that's restricting it, and now your pelvis alters to get your hand up. Your wrist angle alters to get your hand up. Your foot externally rotates away from your center line to get your hand up. Your neck bends to get your hand up. All the things and the rotations through everything. Now, something like meeting somebody and shaking their hand can become something that you have a stressful response to and an emotional experience from. That's not because you shook somebody's hand, but because of what your body had to literally physically go through, as far as physically the clothing that it had to work around to shake that human being's hand. So now as you went out to reach for the human being's hand, your right side of your rib cage, if you were using your right hand to shake, has now closed off if it's compensating around clothing. So now you associate that shake from that hand of this new human you've just met for the first time with your breathing patterns being altered. The physicality of emotion in the Image Clothing Company, the truth of all things, the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is just what it is, okay? So I'm going to wrap this up because I could get into any and every and all things that this could be, but I feel like the storage space might run out. I'm being prompted to kind of, hey, it's time to wrap it up. And yeah, this is one of those things, hypothetical after hypothetical is the same thing. The big thing is we discuss all the time where clothing has to sit. There's no opinion. There's no preference. The body only will ever work how it does. And do that, right? And there we go. So we will have clothing available, though, under In The Image Clothing Company when and as we do. So if you'd like to purchase it, make sure you do everything you can to get it in a size that is yours, where it fits where we discuss clothing has to, because it's not my opinion. The body is a machine, and it can't be restricted without complication and a lot of emotions coming that we don't have to experience and are things that are not so fluid to go through, right? Truly. Yeah, in all seriousness. So yeah, if you'd like to purchase that when it comes time, it will, as I said earlier, stay centered, fit correct, and that's how it will allow the body to work. And it will be made out of 100% natural materials to also just, right, have no alteration that could happen in the case of clothing that does have unnatural things that seep into the body, because that in itself plays into your emotions. You're being literally toxified and poisoned by synthetic materials placed onto your body. Your body has the little holes all over in it that perspiration comes out of, sweat. They're called pores. And if something can come out, something can also go back in, right? So we place something onto us and it can go inside. And now going throughout our day, we might feel really emotional and not know what to attribute it to, but it's actually because we're not in some kind of making this exaggerated. In all absolute seriousness, is oil. We're being poisoned in that case by that thing going into our bodies. So emotionally, right, the motion of our body is being restricted, inhibited, and changed. And so the energy that it takes to do anything is changed as well. The body feels the things that we label as anxiety, depression, all the emotions, right, that we associate with whatever we do, but these are the real reasons in these ways and for these reasons that is happening, okay? So, yeah. All the things that we discuss on how clothing needs to be, it's no opinion. No opinion. Never will change. Never. So, that's why I'm so bold about things, because I know the repercussions, and I've dealt with them greatly to a degree that some people never have to, and to the degree that some people definitely know how much it is to have to live with, okay? So, yes, the physicality of emotions. The big thing to mention is fingernails. I talked about how a lot of times people don't feel like they have a physical grasp on reality, right? Well, you grasp things with your feet, which we don't think about so often, but the arches in our feet grip the ground, and we grasp things with our hands. So fingernails and toenails need to be entirely to the tips of the toes and fingers to support them naturally, and then your body has its natural support, and then there's no compensation that has to happen within anything else to just allow the body to do what it's going to. Okay, I like to cut them flat on the tips, and you can round the corners because that way they don't roll, and you've just got so much strength naturally compared to what you may be used to if you've been cutting your nails too short. That's what they're for, to support the fingers. And so a lot of times with emotions, you feel just so lost, and even stuff like disassociation. You feel like you're like out of touch with reality, right? And so that's what I say. When I talk about fingernails and toenails, a lot of times I correlate it with having a grasp on reality of just what's around you, because otherwise you feel like you're just falling away, right? I felt it, definitely. So yeah, the physicality of emotion. It is a physical thing. Some people have a lot of thoughts that come when they feel certain emotions, and there's a lot of ways that we do experience emotion that is a little bit varied from human to human, but it is a physical sensation, okay? So we really are big here. It's not for recognition, but it's for impact. It's for spreading truth. In the Image Clothing Company, we talk about stuff like this. And the things that I get so particular about, it's for these reasons, okay? So yeah, the physicality of emotion. Anything and everything that goes into that, we talk about if and when we do. But I think it's good to have this as an episode as it is, regardless of what else I maybe could add into this as well, as long as this could be as deep as I could talk about this currently right now within this specific episode. I think it's good even if it was just for this reason, people scrolling through In the Image Clothing Company podcast numbers, right? From today's date, they're going, between episode 1 and episode 79, which is this one here, the physicality of emotion. And if they're seeing it, even if we've got hundreds of episodes, thousands, whatever it is, they come back and they scroll through and they're scrolling through and they see the word emotion. They're like, okay, the physicality of emotion. And that may seem a little bit different than things like clothing and a lot of the other stuff that we talk about that's more like specific, related to a certain item of clothing, a certain function of the body mechanically, or even a certain topic under the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it'll be really great to have this. I know how much people's emotions are dysregulated, but I also understand how much people's bodily fluids are dysregulated. So all the things that we really do discuss here under In the Image Clothing Company, they apply to every human to ever live across the entirety of our earth, and they're just what they are and will never change. So I'm so grateful to be able to sit here and talk about this and give some insight, because you're not dealing with what you think you are. You can address all your childhood trauma. You can address everything and anything you want in any kind of way you want to look at emotion. You can add, which never needs to happen, any routine or type of approach that you want. But the whole point, because the goal is natural, is just removing everything, getting the body to its foundational only workings. And that's where we can then, if needed, do fine-tuning, address some things that come up here and there. But the big point is pray. Human beings are equals, even if it seems hard to see that to you or I when it comes to seeing him or her, right? But it is the truth, and our God is above all of us, and he knows all of us. He knows every one of our needs perfectly, and so praying is actually the way that we're going to have the things change. Yeah. So the physicality of emotion. If there's tension within the body, there's tension. I mean, you think about being in like a crowded room and all these eyes on you, and some people say like, I feel really tense right now, or like a tense situation. Again, it's like what I talked about with nervousness, and it comes from the physical nervous system of the body. So many things are so literal within life. We think a lot of things are just what they aren't. And we say things the way that we do because they are what they are. Feeling like you're in a tense environment is because there's physical tension within your body, and you notice it so much more when you start to feel emotion. Your body notices its things that are being inhibited the most in the times when it feels like it needs the most freedom of movement. Okay, so there you go. The physicality of emotion. I'm gonna cut it just like that. Like I said, it's the 14th of March, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and thank you for listening to episode 79 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled The Physicality of Emotion. Yeah, thank you.